So hello everyone, I'm back and I've been messing about with my setup, which hopefully I've made some improvements, but we'll see. So as I posted out recently, I replaced my travel camera with a Nikon Z50, and the idea was that would kind of rationalize my setup a bit. I could just focus on one type of lenses, and the Z50 is roughly the same size as the G80 anyway. So in terms of their sort of physical weights and so on, they're about the same. I do have some reservations about what lenses are going to come out for the Z50. I've got the standard kit lens, which is a 16 something or other. But I hope they do a few more. But also, obviously, I've got the option of using my other Nikon glass with the adapter, or in the future, I probably will buy some kind of Nikon full frame mirrorless, maybe a Z7 II or something, but I'll think about that later. So the change I've made to this setup is I've decided that rather than sell the G80 is I'm going to use it for recording. So I used to have an old JVC that did my kind of recording, but it wasn't the best. So I'm going to give this a try instead. So I've got it mounted where the JVC was, off to one side, and I can sort of turn and look at it. And I think that's better. So for those of you who don't know, most of my recording is for teaching, so it's not for YouTube, and it's just a little bit better if people can see more clearly what I'm doing and so on. So hopefully it's working okay. I don't know what the autofocus is like. The way it's set up at the minute is I can't have the HDMI cable plugged in and see the screen, so I'm going to have to get a different HDMI cable because it gets in the way. So I've got no idea if it's properly focused, but sort of in this room and not moving around too much, the autofocus seems okay, as long as I've remembered to switch it on, which is another problem. I do have a remote control which can turn it on and off, and that has a little connector on the camera. It's wireless, obviously. But yeah, so when I can see the screen, it'll be a bit better. Although I've noticed that when I have the screen there, I tend to look at it. So rather than look down the lens, which is a bit distracting. So I might just see if it does okay, if I can kind of trust it. I might actually not bother flipping the screen out and see how I get on. The other thing I've done is I found on eBay a battery DC adapter, so a fake battery pack that's a DC adapter, and it was £4 on eBay. So I bought that, and hopefully that means I can run mains into the camera and not have to keep swapping batteries and worrying about it going flat and so on. So that's pretty cool. I mean, what I would like to do, so I actually have a way of doing transitions now. I'm starting to learn how OBS works. It's been a bit of time. So the camera I'd actually quite like is this one. And you might be thinking, well, you could do a lot better than that with a different one, but I'll just zoom in a bit. I think it's the aesthetics of this that I actually really like. I've got a thing about kind of blocks, square black boxes that are cameras. So it's actually kind of an aesthetic appeal that I quite like with this camera, which is ridiculous, but there we go. So much of what we buy in terms of camera gear has nothing to do with the camera gear. It's more of the aesthetics. But I think this would be quite nice as a sort of in this setup. It looks a little bit more compact in terms of it's square, so it would fit in the space I have the Lumix mounted. It would fit quite nicely. And then obviously it's designed for continuous shooting of video, and I wouldn't have to worry about if I was doing a lecture or whatever, the SD card, the recording limit of the G80 being hit. I mean, normally I don't do lectures continuously more than half an hour long anyway, so it shouldn't be a problem. I tend to keep things for teaching and for YouTube relatively short, so it'd probably be okay. Obviously, I couldn't really use it for streaming. It wouldn't work for that. But this obviously would presumably record continuously. The other thing I'm not sure about, if this can record just to an external recorder, so you don't have to worry about storage and things. It may well do. And it looks like it also has things like Ethernet and various other useful attachments. I wouldn't need any of these sort of massive lenses. In fact, actually, I was looking at this lens, which I thought looked pretty good. So the lens I have on the Lumix, the G80, is a 14mm f2.5, which is fine. So if I just go back to just me, you can see that actually that's a pretty decent focal length for the space I have, which is pretty limited. And obviously it doesn't blow out the background too much, but that's fine. It's 2.5 at the minute. But what I'd quite like is something a bit like this. So I think this would be quite cool. A 10-25 f1.7 would be equivalent of a 20-50 on a 35mm camera, which would definitely cross over this focal length. So this is equivalent of a 28, because it's 14mm on the micro four thirds, and a slightly wider aperture would be quite good. And I imagine the autofocus on this is pretty decent. So I think it would be a pretty nice setup, really. It would be a big investment just for doing teaching and bits of YouTube for me, because I think this is 1800, and I believe this is, it's not got a price there, but I think it's pretty much 1800 as well, more or less. But anyway, we are where we are, and I think the G80 in this space is pretty good, and it does mean that I can keep my 14mm and 20mm micro four thirds lenses, and the possibility that I regret my Z50 purchase in the future. So yeah, this is my first test with it. I literally just set it up this morning. So I'll be inspecting the autofocus to see if it's managed to keep reasonably in focus. Obviously, if it goes out a little bit every now and then, that's not going to be a massive problem. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.